Admiral Kethavar stood in front of the massive war room display, his four eyes wide with shock. The hologram showed something that made no sense at all. 12 different alien races had joined together. 10,000 warships floated in perfect formation. This was the biggest fleet anyone had ever seen in this part of space, and the humans had sent just one tiny ship to face them all. His hands shook as he stared at the screen. This had to be wrong. No species could be this stupid. No one would send a single ship against an army this big. It was like sending one soldier to fight an entire planet. "Check those numbers again," he told his officer, his voice rough with confusion. The young Zephyrian at the control panel ran the scans 3 more times. His green skin turned pale as he looked up. "The readings are correct, sir. One human vessel, they call it the UES Defiance. It looks like a medium-sized fighting ship, about 800 meters long, no other ships anywhere near it." The war room exploded with noise. Representatives from all 12 alien races started talking at once. Everyone had different ideas about what this meant. Some spoke in clicks and whistles, others made deep rumbling sounds. The universal translators worked hard to keep up with all the different languages. The Thrakari delegate moved his bug-like mouthparts nervously. "Maybe they want to give up without a fight," he suggested. "Some species do that when they see they cannot win." A female Vorthan officer laughed, showing her sharp teeth. Her lizard-like face showed nothing but scorn. "Or maybe they have gone crazy with fear. Humans are known for making bad choices when they get scared. They let their feelings control them instead of using their brains." Admiral Kethavar had been a soldier for most of his long life. He had attacked and taken over 14 different worlds. He had seen brave species fight until every last one of them was dead. He had watched other races surrender the moment they saw his ships. But this was different. This was something new and strange. The human ship had asked for permission to dock at Corvin Station. This was normal behavior for diplomats who wanted to talk. There was nothing weird about that request. But everything else about this situation was completely wrong. Kethavar walked closer to the display and studied the small human ship. It looked ordinary enough. Not too big, not too small. It had the usual weapons that most races put on their warships. There was nothing special about it that he could see. So why would they send just this one ship? "Maybe it is a trick," said another officer. "Perhaps they have hidden ships waiting somewhere." The sensor operator shook his head. "We have checked everything for light years in every direction. There are no other human ships anywhere, just this one. Could it be carrying some kind of super weapon?" asked the Thrakari delegate. "Our scans show normal energy levels," came the reply. "Nothing unusual at all. Admiral Kethavar had fought many battles and won them all. He knew how war worked. When 2 armies met, the bigger one usually won. Sometimes a smaller force could win if they were much smarter or had better weapons, but those victories needed careful planning and perfect timing. They also needed the smaller force to be close to the same size as their enemy, not thousands of times smaller. This was not a smart battle plan. This was not a clever trick. This looked like pure madness. "Sir," said his aide, "what should we do?" The Admiral thought about it. He could destroy the human ship right now with a single order. One blast from any of his ships would turn it into floating metal pieces. The war would be over before it started. But something held him back. In all his years of fighting, he had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong with this picture. No race survived long enough to build starships by being this stupid. The humans had to know they were facing impossible odds. So why were they acting like they did not care? "They asked to dock at the neutral station," he said slowly. "That means they want to talk." "Talk about what?" asked the Vorthan officer. "We already told them what we want. Complete surrender. Give up their planet and all their colonies. Accept our rule over their entire species. Maybe they want to beg for mercy," suggested someone else. Admiral Kethavar stared at the lone human ship on his screen. He had a feeling that begging was not what these humans had in mind. Something about this whole situation felt like a trap, but he could not figure out what kind of trap it might be. "Grant them permission to dock," he decided. "I want to meet these humans face to face. I want to see their eyes when they realize how hopeless their situation really is." The order went out across the communication channels. Soon, representatives from both sides would meet at the neutral station. Admiral Kethvar had a strange feeling that this meeting would be unlike any other in his long military career. Captain Lee Hyun walked slowly through the metal tunnel that connected his ship to Corvin Station. His boots made soft clicking sounds on the floor. Behind him walked 3 other humans. Kim Nari was his second in command, a smart woman who had served with him for many years. Park Woo was the best engineer in the human fleet, a quiet man who understood machines better than most people understood themselves. Cho Hana was their diplomat, trained to speak with alien races and find peaceful solutions to problems. The 4 humans looked very small and alone as they entered the huge central room of the space station. The room was filled with aliens from 12 different worlds. Some were tall and thin like walking sticks. Others were short and wide like living rocks. A few had multiple arms, extra eyes, or skin that changed colors. All of them were staring at the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to anger to complete disbelief. Admiral Kethvar stood in the center of the group, his 4 eyes focused on Captain Lee. He had expected the human leader to look scared or desperate. Many species sent their most dramatic speakers to beg for mercy when facing certain death. Others sent their angriest warriors to make threats they could not back up. Instead, Captain Lee looked completely calm. He walked forward with steady steps and stopped a respectful distance from the alien leaders. Then he did something that surprised everyone in the room. He bowed his head in a gesture of respect and spoke in a quiet, polite voice. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us today," he said through his translation device. "I bring greetings from Earth and all of humanity. We hope, very much, that we can find a peaceful way to solve our differences." The Thrakari delegate made a harsh clicking sound with his mouthparts. His translator turned the sound into words. "Peaceful? You are about to die. Your home planet will be destroyed in 3 days if you do not surrender completely. There is no room for peace talks here." Captain Lee turned slightly to look at Kim Nari. She gave him a tiny nod that only he could see. Then he turned back to face the crowd of angry aliens. "I am sorry, but we cannot accept your demands," he said in the same calm voice. "Instead, we would like to make our own suggestion." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. When he pressed a button, a 3-dimensional image appeared in the air above his hand. "We ask that all of your ships leave human space immediately. We also want you to sign an agreement promising never to attack us again." The room fell completely silent. Every alien in the chamber stared at the human captain as if he had just said something impossible to believe. For a long moment, nobody moved or spoke. Then someone started laughing. It was a low, rumbling sound that came from deep in a Vorthan throat. Soon, other aliens joined in. The laughter spread through the room like a disease. Some aliens made high-pitched giggling sounds. Others produced deep belly laughs that shook their entire bodies. A few made noises that sounded more like machinery breaking than actual laughter. The sound grew louder and louder until it filled the entire chamber. Aliens pointed at the humans and made gestures that clearly meant they thought the human proposal was the funniest thing they had ever heard. The Vorthan delegate who had started. The laughter managed to speak between her gasps for air. "One ship," she wheezed, her lizard-like face twisted with amusement. "You bring 1 ship to fight 10,000 of ours, and then you tell us to go away. Have you completely lost your minds?" Other aliens shouted similar comments. They called the humans crazy, stupid, and completely out of touch with reality. Some suggested that fear had driven the humans insane. Others wondered if humans were naturally bad at understanding numbers. Captain Lee waited patiently for the laughter to die down. He did not look angry or embarrassed. His 3 companions also remained calm, as if they had expected this exact reaction. When the noise finally started to fade, the captain smiled in a way that was polite, but somehow unsettling. "You are absolutely right," he said, his voice still quiet and respectful. "It really is not fair at all. 10,000 ships against just 1. We probably should have brought a smaller force to make it more even." The laughter stopped as suddenly as if someone had turned off a switch. Every alien in the room stared at Captain Lee with new expressions on their faces. The amusement was gone, replaced by confusion and the first tiny hints of worry. "But," Captain Lee continued, his smile never changing, "our leaders thought that one ship would be enough for this mission. The silence that followed was different from the one before. This time it was not the quiet that comes before laughter. It was the kind of silence that comes when people suddenly realize they might have missed something important, something that could change everything they thought they knew about the situation. Admiral Kethavar felt a cold chill run through his body, even though the station's temperature had not changed at all. The talking had gone on for many hours inside the space station. Captain Lee had tried to explain humanity's offer again and again, but the alien leaders would not listen. They kept laughing and making jokes about the single human ship. They acted like children who had been told an impossible story. Chohana, the human diplomat, had been sitting quietly through most of the discussions. She was a patient woman who knew how to deal with difficult people, but even her patience had limits. She leaned forward in her chair and spoke for the first time in hours. "Maybe it would help if we showed you what we mean," she said in a calm voice. "We would like to move our ship to a place where we can give you a demonstration. There is an empty area of space called Grid Section 7. No planets, no space stations, nothing important that could get damaged." Admiral Kethavar's military training kicked in immediately. He had been fighting wars for a long time, and he knew a challenge when he heard one. His four eyes narrowed as he stared at the human woman. This was exactly what he had been expecting. The humans wanted to show off their weapons and try to scare the collective into backing down. "So you want to put on a little show for us," he said with a nasty smile. "You think if you fire a few shots, we will run away like frightened children? Fine, I will send 100 of my best ships to watch your display." The word display came out of his mouth like an insult. He was making it clear that he expected to see nothing impressive. The UES Defiance moved away from the space station with smooth, graceful movements. The ship's pilot was clearly very skilled. The vessel glided through space like a dancer moving across a stage, every turn and adjustment perfectly controlled. Admiral Kethavar had sent exactly 100 ships to observe the demonstration, just as he had promised. These were some of his best vessels, commanded by experienced officers who had won many battles. They positioned themselves several thousand kilometers away from the human ship. This was what military experts considered a safe viewing distance for weapons tests. Park Woo's voice came through the communication channels. He was the human chief engineer, and his tone was businesslike and professional. "We are about to begin the first part of our demonstration," he announced to the watching fleet. "Please stay at your current distance for your own safety." The alien ship commanders felt insulted by this warning. Safety from one small human vessel. Some of them made angry comments over their private communication channels. A few suggested moving closer, just to show the humans how little they feared their pathetic weapons. Then something happened that none of them had ever seen before. The human ship began to change in ways that defied everything the aliens thought. They knew about physics. Energy readings from their sensors started climbing higher and higher. The numbers went beyond what their instruments could measure. Warning lights flashed on control panels throughout the observation fleet. But the strangest thing was not happening inside the ships. It was happening to space itself around the human vessel. The emptiness of space began to move like water when a stone is dropped into a still pond. Waves of distortion spread out from the Defiance in perfect circles. The fabric of reality twisted and bent in ways that hurt to look at. Space and time seemed to fold in on themselves like a piece of paper being crumpled up by invisible hands. The alien observers watched in growing horror as the laws of nature stopped making sense. Suddenly, without any warning, an asteroid appeared directly in front of the human ship. This was not a small space rock. It was a massive chunk of stone and metal, easily large enough to destroy any normal vessel that got too close to it. The alien commanders checked their long-range sensors frantically. The readings told an impossible story. This same asteroid had been floating peacefully in space more than 3 million kilometers away just moments before. Now it was right next to the human ship, as if it had been teleported across the vast distance in the blink of an eye. Captain Lee's voice came across the communication channels, sounding as casual as if he were discussing the weather. "This is called dimensional folding," he explained to the stunned observers. "We learned how to control the same forces that make faster-than-light travel possible. It turns out that space and time are much more flexible than most people realize. As the alien fleet watched in complete shock, the massive asteroid simply vanished. 1 second it was there, solid and real and definitely present. The next second, it was gone, as if it had never existed at all. The sensors showed that it had returned to its original position, 3 million kilometers away, where it continued floating along its normal path as if nothing had happened. Several of the observation ships immediately began emergency procedures to retreat to a safer distance. Their commanders had suddenly realized that what they had thought was a safe viewing range might not be safe at all. If the humans could move asteroids across millions of kilometers of space in an instant, what else might they be able to do? The silence that followed was the kind that comes when people's entire understanding of the world has just been shattered into pieces. Admiral Kethvar felt his stomach turn cold as ice. In all his years of fighting wars across the galaxy, he had developed a sixth sense about danger. That sense was now screaming at him louder than it ever had before, but his mind could not understand what his instincts were trying to tell him. The human ship had not fired any weapons. There had been no explosions, no energy beams, no missiles. Instead, they had done something far more terrifying. They had reached out and grabbed the basic forces that held the universe together, then twisted those forces like a child playing with modeling clay. Kim Nari's voice came through the communication channels again. She was the human first officer, and she spoke with the same calm professionalism that all the humans had shown. We will now begin the second part of our demonstration. This will show you our defensive capabilities. The alien commanders watched their sensors carefully, expecting to see shields activate or armor plating extend from the human ship's hull. Instead, they saw something that made no sense at all. The UES Defiance began to fade away like a ghost. The solid metal hull became see-through, as if it were made of clear glass instead of steel. But it was not just becoming transparent. The ship seemed to exist in several different places at the same time. The sensors showed readings that contradicted each other completely. According to the instruments, the human ship was directly in front of them, but the same instruments also said it was slightly to the left, and also to the right, and above them, and below them. The readings suggested that the ship was occupying the same space, while somehow not being there at all. "This is spatial displacement," Kim Nari explained, her voice still perfectly calm. "We have moved our ship slightly outside of normal space and time. We are still here, but we are also not here. Ordinary weapons cannot hit us while we exist. In this state, one of the Thrakari observation commanders could not contain himself any longer. His voice came through the communication system, high-pitched with fear and confusion. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "How can you do these things? What kind of technology is this?" Captain Lee answered the question with the same unsettling calm he had shown throughout the entire encounter. "Humanity spent many centuries learning about our own ability to destroy things. We fought terrible wars against each other for thousands of years. We killed millions of our own people with weapons that got more and more powerful." He paused for a moment as if remembering something sad. "But eventually, we learned something important. Real strength is not about being able to destroy your enemies. Real strength is about having the wisdom to choose not to destroy them, even when you easily could." Park Woo, the chief engineer, added his own comment in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. "A ship like the Defiance has enough power to make your home star collapse into a black hole. We could fold space to put your entire fleet inside the burning heart of a sun. But we would rather talk with you and find a peaceful solution." The words hit the alien commanders like physical blows. A black hole was one of the most destructive forces in the universe. Stars that collapsed into black holes could swallow entire solar systems. And these humans were claiming they could create such things on purpose, as easily as lighting a candle. The observation fleet had started moving away from the human ship as soon as the first demonstration began. Now that retreat turned into a panicked flight. Ship after ship engaged their emergency engines and raced away from the Defiance as fast as their technology could carry them. But even as they ran, the alien commanders knew it was pointless. If The humans could fold space and move objects across millions of kilometers instantly. Then no amount of distance would keep them safe. The humans could reach out and touch them anywhere in the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar stood frozen in his command center, staring at the displays that showed his mighty fleet scattering like frightened insects. For the first time in his long military career, he felt completely helpless. All his experience, all his victories, all his carefully planned strategies meant nothing in the face of this impossible technology. His 10,000 ships had suddenly become nothing more than expensive toys. The weapons that had conquered 14 worlds were now as useless as throwing rocks at a hurricane. The armor that had protected his vessels through countless battles could not stop enemies who attacked by changing the laws of physics themselves. But the most terrifying thing was not the humans' power, it was their restraint. They could have destroyed the entire collective fleet without breaking a sweat. They could have turned every alien world into ash and dust. Instead, they had chosen to give a peaceful demonstration and ask for negotiations. These humans were not desperate survivors making a last stand. They were not warriors driven mad by fear. They were calm, rational beings who possessed godlike power and chose to use it with careful wisdom. Admiral Kethvar realized with crystal clear horror that his massive, proud fleet was not just defeated. It was completely, utterly, hopelessly obsolete. The age of conventional warfare had just ended, and he had not even known it was happening. Within just a few hours, every important military leader from all 12 alien species had gathered for an emergency meeting. The call had gone out across the galaxy using the fastest communication methods available. This was a crisis unlike anything any of them had ever faced before. The meeting room was filled with the most experienced war commanders from dozens of different worlds. These were beings who had spent their entire lives learning how to fight, conquer, and survive. They had won battles against impossible odds. They had destroyed entire civilizations and rebuilt them according to their own plans. But now they all sat in stunned silence, trying to understand a reality that made no sense. They had threatened a race of beings who could wipe them all out of existence as easily as stepping on an insect. The humans possessed technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. Worse yet, the humans had been polite about demonstrating their power, as if destroying star systems was just a normal part of conversation. The debate began slowly, with quiet, worried voices. But soon it grew louder and more desperate as the full implications of their situation became clear. Some of the alien leaders wanted to surrender immediately. "We should give them whatever they want," argued a Vorthan general, her scaled hands shaking as she spoke. "Better to live as their servants than to die as their enemies." Others refused to accept defeat so easily. A Thrakari commander slammed his clawed fist on the table. "We cannot simply roll over and show our bellies like beaten animals. If we must die, we should die fighting. At least our children will remember that we had courage." A few of the more clever leaders suggested trying to steal the human technology. "If we could capture just one of their ships," whispered a Zephyrian intelligence officer, "we might be able to learn their secrets. Then we could build our own weapons to match theirs." The arguments went round and round in circles for hours. Every suggestion seemed either cowardly or suicidal. There appeared to be no good choices left. Captain Lee sat quietly through all of this, listening to the alien leaders argue about his species' fate. He showed no anger at their threats, no satisfaction at their fear. He simply waited with the same calm patience he had displayed throughout the entire encounter. Finally, when the shouting had died down to exhausted murmurs, he spoke in the same quiet voice he had used from the beginning. "There is a third choice," he said. His words were soft, but they cut through the noise like a sharp knife through cloth. "Real cooperation between our peoples." The room fell silent. Every alien eye turned to look at the human captain. Chohana, the human diplomat, stepped forward to stand beside her captain. "Humanity does not want to rule over you," she said clearly. "We want to work with you as partners. Your species have knowledge, art, culture, and ways of thinking that we find valuable. We suggest that we all work together for everyone's benefit, not just our own." Admiral Kethvar's voice came out as a harsh whisper. "Why?" he asked. "You have the power to make us all obey you. You could rule the entire galaxy if you wanted to. Why would you choose anything else?" Captain Lee's answer was simple and direct. Because our wise people spent hundreds of years studying humanity's violent history, we learned from our own mistakes. Every intelligent species eventually has to make the same choice. They can become bullies who use their power to hurt others, or they can choose to break that cycle of violence. We decided to break it. The alien leaders looked at each other with expressions of confusion and uncertainty. This was not conquest, where the winner took everything and the loser lost everything. This was not surrender, where one side gave up completely. This was something entirely new and different. Kim Nari, the human first officer, added one final piece of information that would give the aliens nightmares for years to come. The UES Defiance is one of our medium-level diplomatic ships, she said in a matter-of-fact tone. We use vessels like this when we hope the other side will be reasonable and willing to talk. We sent a ship that we were prepared to lose if the negotiations went badly. The implications of her words hit the alien leaders like a physical blow. If this terrifyingly powerful vessel was just a mid-range diplomatic ship, what did humanity's actual warships look like? What kind of technology did they possess when they were actually trying to fight instead of just trying to talk? The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Every being in the room was thinking the same thought, but none of them dared to voice it out loud. Finally, Admiral Kethavar stood up slowly. His four eyes were filled with a mixture of defeat, respect, and relief. In a formal ceremonial voice, he announced the surrender of the entire collective fleet and accepted humanity's terms for cooperation. As the UES Defiance prepared to leave Corvin Station and return to human space, not a single alien asked any questions about humanity's more advanced ships. Some questions they had all realized were much better left unanswered. The universe had just become a very different place, and they were all going to have to learn how to live in it.